Hello and welcome to iHeart Cooking. I'm registered dietitian Jennifer Stachler.
And I'm Chef Dugan Wetzel.
We are both from Reid Health. Today's program is brought to you by Reid Health Community Benefits, WCTV, and RPNL.
On today's show, we're going to be talking about budget-friendly meals.
We're going to be talking about budget-friendly meals. So one thing about cooking healthy that I get all the time from my patients is cooking healthy is expensive. Well, it doesn't have to be. That's something that we can make it budget-friendly, cost-effective, and still be healthy. So the first recipe we're actually going to be working with is a baked lentil casserole. And I don't know about you, but when I talk about lentils and legumes, some of my patients give me kind of stares like, what are you talking about? I've never heard them, never really tried them. So that's something that lentils is actually one of the oldest legumes used out there. And it's great in fiber, protein, B vitamins. So that's something that has a lot of nutrition that we can use the lentils instead of using a protein source because it has that protein added to that. Very easy recipe to do. So we'll get started kind of making it, and basically you're just gonna throw all your ingredients together.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead and bring this over here. We need a 3/4 cups of water, so I'm going to go ahead and get that really quick.
And while he's getting that, I can even talk more about this lentils that we're adding to this dish. Like I said, it's great in protein, so it does provide a decent amount of protein for you. It's also really high in fiber. About 1 cup of lentils has 16 grams of fiber. And when we're talking fiber intake, the recommended amount of fiber for an adult is 25 to 35 grams per day. So 1 cup of lentils is getting you almost all of that.
So we're going ahead and add our water, our lentils. We're going to add our onions, tomatoes. If you can reach those for me over there.
Absolutely, we'll add those. And again, the tomatoes, nice red color, adding that pigment of lycopene, which is an antioxidant to make it, again, heart-friendly and also helps fight free radicals for certain cancers.
All we do now is we mix it up, put some aluminum foil over the top, and into the oven for about 30 minutes. When you're putting it in the oven, you're going to want it to be around 350 degrees. So always preheat your oven. I know this takes but a minute to put everything together, but you always want to start with a hot oven, just like you always want to start with a hot saute pan. So just putting the foil on it, make sure it's sealed, and into the oven for 30 minutes.
So now that we have that baked casserole in the oven for about that 30 minutes, there are a few more steps we're going to do later to that, but while that is actually baking, we're going to move on to another kind of budget-friendly meal. So a nice, really budget-friendly, what you can make it your own kind of meal is a quiche, just a very basic quiche. And there's so many different types of quiches and what ingredients you add to it, and we'll kind of talk about those here in a little bit, but we're going to start with the basic recipe and show you different things that we can add to it.
So yeah, all we're going to do, we've got 3 eggs here. We're going to go ahead and crack them and put them into our bowl. Just real fast. A trick at home that I learned through my time cooking, to get the shells, I know sometimes if you hit it really hard and the shell kind of cracks and goes into your bowl and you got to dig around and fish it out. Something that I learned real simple and easy, you just take 2 eggs, tap them against each other, and for some reason, only one breaks. I don't know the science behind it, but that's just how it happens. So as you can see, it cracked and it shattered the piece there in the egg, but the shell stayed intact. So all you got to do now is crack it open and put it in there.
Which is a nice little tip, because I think I'm forever trying to fish some kind of eggshell out of a dish when I'm breaking it up.
Okay, so now we got our eggs in there. We're just going to whisk them together.
And for many of you that don't know what a basic quiche is. It's basically eggs, possibly a protein, some vegetables, and a pie crust, and you bake it. So eggs are the main component of this, which you're thinking of eggs as a great protein source for you.
Absolutely. And another way that you can do this if you don't want to add the pie crust is a frittata, which is just no crust added to it.
So it's just a quiche without the crust.
Absolutely.
But a nice fancier name.
So we've got our eggs mixed. We're actually going to go ahead and turn on our pan here. We're going to cook our vegetables. That way, when we add them to the egg, we're not going to need to worry about it taking a little bit longer time in the oven to cook them off. So we'll let that heat up, and then we'll get to cooking our vegetables.
Absolutely. And one other nice thing about a quiche, it doesn't really take a lot of time. So that's something that a lot of us have busy schedules, and we still want something healthy. We still want something that doesn't cost a lot, and this is perfect. And you're probably thinking, wait, eggs, you mostly see that for breakfast. You can have quiche for any meal.
I like,
Even
eggs
though
anytime,
commonly you hear it for breakfast. But it can work for dinner, for lunch as well. So our dish is about warm. One other kind of nutrition thing that you can kind of change about this, if you're somebody who's looking at cholesterol or even the amount of fat intake, you can use less egg yolks. So you don't want to get rid of them completely because it is kind of a binding factor that you need for the quiche. But that's something, if you have 3 eggs, you could possibly use 1 egg yolk and the rest egg whites. For amount, you might want to add an extra egg white in there or so, just because you're losing some of the amount of the egg, just to make sure that it equally fills that pan for you.
Absolutely. Okay, so our pan is heated up. We're going to go ahead and start cooking our vegetables. A nice thing to remember, you start with the vegetables that are going to take the longest first, and then transition into the ones that are going to take the least amount of time. Reason for doing that is, say, like with this one, we're using mushrooms, broccoli, and asparagus. Now the broccoli and asparagus are frozen, so they're already pre-cooked and ready to go. You just have to reheat them. If you were to put those in first, the asparagus would get really just soggy and just not really edible. So you want to start with your mushrooms because those are raw. They'll take a little bit of time. So we're going to go ahead. We're using a baby cremini mushroom. Feel free to use a white mushroom or whatever, whatever preference you like. It's really up to you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of water. That water is going to steam and kind of help cook the mushrooms through, get them going, because you're just putting them in a dry pan. That's going to take a whole lot longer to cook them completely through. So, because if you know, mushrooms have a ton of moisture in them, so once they're done cooking, you'll see all the water and liquid in the bottom of it.
Absolutely.
Just adding a little bit to start will kind of speed up that process. So.
Especially since we're not adding any oil or butters to that. That's something, by not doing that, you're using less calories there and also less fats. So that's something a little bit more health-wise, and if you're watching your weight, could help with calories too. So it's a nice way of kind of skipping that part and still cooking vegetables.
So it'll take 2 or 3 minutes here to get the mushrooms started. You don't want to cook them all the way through. You're probably looking at about halfway. One good way to tell that is you're still going to see they're really firm in the middles especially, but the outsides are going to start getting a little darker. They're going to have a little bit more of a rubber texture to them. So once they get to that point, then we'll go ahead and start adding our next ingredient, which is actually going to be the broccoli. So
our baked lentil casserole is actually done for that first 30 minutes. So we're going to grab that because we have the second step we're going to actually do for that. So as Dugan is bringing that out, what we're actually going to do is we're going to take the foil off the top. Oops. And you're actually just going to put some carrots that have been grated on the top, and you're going to stir those in. Another component and another non-starchy vegetable for this dish, and it gives a nice, good color. You got some green with the lentils, some red with the tomatoes, and now you have the orange with the carrots. And then we're going to cover it back with foil, put put it back in the oven at that 350 for another 30 minutes. Now coming back to our quiche, our mushrooms are about cooked where we about want them before we start adding the other vegetables. One thing you want to make sure when you're cooking these vegetables, you still want to make sure they are crisp, because this quiche is still going to be baked in the oven, so you don't want to make sure those, again, vegetables are soggy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see from up above here, the middle of these mushrooms are still kind of firm, but the outsides are nice and tender, so that's about halfway. So we're going to go ahead and add our broccoli. Again, it's a frozen broccoli. We're using cuts. It's just going to take another 3 to 5 minutes to reheat it, get that chill off of them, and then we'll finish with the asparagus.
And it's adding that nice green vegetable. So you're looking at a dark green kind of leafier vegetable, good amount of vitamin K, and very low in calories, very low in carbohydrates in there as well. Also with this dish, you don't have to use mushrooms if you don't like them. You don't have to use the broccoli if you don't like them. You don't have to use the asparagus if you don't like them. You can use other vegetables as well, or you can omit certain ones and just use broccoli, just use the asparagus. Kind of make it your own to what you like.
Okay. So while we're waiting here, we have our eggs mixed up already. We can go ahead and add, we're using fat-free skim milk, just a cup to our 3 eggs. Again, that kind of helps with the volume in the quiche. We're going to add a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit of pepper.
And again, we're omitting any kind of salt in this product to help reduce the amount of sodium, helping with heart disease, fluid retention, and hypertension. Mix that together. Another nice thing about the fat-free milk, less calories, less saturated fats, less calories to help with weight control, and also less fat to help with heart disease as well.
Absolutely. Something else you can do, adding herbs to the egg mixture is always an easy idea when you're trying to get more flavors into it. Something that's really popular with eggs is basil. Just a little bit of dried basil or fresh basil if you have it, just in there, mix it up, and it just adds another dimension to the quiche. So broccoli's about there, so we're going to add our asparagus. Again, asparagus is already pre-cooked, so it will not take long at all for that to reheat. So.
And if you want to use fresh broccoli and fresh asparagus, you can. Frozen tends to be a little bit cheaper, especially depending on the time of year that you're using this. So if you want to use asparagus and you want to use fresh, you're better off making this kind of quiche during the springtime when asparagus is most commonly available. And also it's less cheaper. So that's something, if you would want to make this in the wintertime and you go to the store to buy asparagus, it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Absolutely.
So looking at the types of produce, if you want fresh, if you want frozen, look at the time of year and look at the cost too to help again with that budget friendly. So our vegetables are done, so we're going to kind of move on to our next little step there.
Going to go ahead and actually add it to our pie. Just put it in the bottom.
And that's something you can use a pre-bought pie crust, or you can make your own. One thing about the pre-bought pie crust is they are definitely going to be higher in sodium and a lot of times fat as well. Where if you make it at home, you can kind of watch how much of those types of ingredients you add to it. But again, pie crust takes some time to make. So if you're somebody in a hurry, or you're working, you want to come home, make a quick, healthy meal, a frozen pie crust or a refrigerated pie crust would be absolutely fine to use for this.
Now we've got everything mixed together in our egg mixture. Just going to pour it over the top. You don't want to go all the way to the top, maybe about halfway, just because there's going to be some rise in the egg. But yeah, it's ready to go in the oven. Take about 30 to 40 minutes to bake all the way through at 350 degrees?
I would say 350, absolutely. And again, that varies on every single oven. I mean, everybody's temperature is going to be a little bit different. Another kind of component of quiches is that many people add ham, bacon, other types of proteins to that. We don't have that at that time because the egg is adding that protein, so we don't really need to add more. I'm not saying you can't, but sometimes having more protein than what you need is just adding extra calories throughout the day and extra fat. So that's something we omit at that because you're already getting the protein in the eggs, and then you're getting a vegetable, and then you're getting the grain with the pie crust. We're going to top it with some cheese there, but yeah, feel free to add some extra protein if you like that.
The cheese will actually help as a binder as well, especially if you decide to take one of the yolks out. Having the cheese on top will kind of help just bring everything together and hold it, just so it's not such a runny
Absolutely.
piece when you cut it. So.
Yeah, because that's something when you do cut into this, eventually you want everything to kind of stick together and not run out. If it's still runny, you know it's not baked all the way through. So we'll put that in the oven for about 30 minutes. So our baked lentil casserole has cooked for another 30 minutes, and we have one more step that we're going to do for that. So Dugan's going to be pulling that out here.
Okay.
So we'll have this out here, and we're going to take this off. You can kind of smell it. All those tomatoes cooking with the carrots and the lentils. And we're actually going to put just cheese on the top. So we're going to kind of spread the cheese on the top. You can use a shredded mild cheddar cheese, or you can use a sharp depending on your preference and kind of what you like. And then we're going to take the cover off and put it back in the oven for about 5 minutes to let that cheese kind of melt over the casserole. And then that's complete, and we'll get ready to try that here in a little bit. And while he's putting that in, you can kind of see that the quiche is still kind of cooking. It still has a while to go yet. Again, we said about 30 minutes for that to kind of bind together and cook through. So our baked lentil casserole is actually done. So we're going to pull that out and actually let it cool a little bit and give it a try. We're letting that quiche kind of cook a little bit longer. It's about almost all the way there, but we want to let it in so make sure it's not that runniness to that. So we'll kind of dish this up and give this a try real quick. And it probably will be a little bit on the runnier side, especially the tomatoes and how much juice you use. We'll get some of the cheese on top of there. But again, this is adding a grain, which the lentils, which also are going to add those proteins. You got the tomatoes in it, which is a vegetable. So something you're getting two different food groups in there. If you want to get a little bit more of what we call my plate, that food pyramid that they used to have is now a my plate. You could add a fruit, you could add a dairy to this very easily. So the one thing nice about this is that per serving, it's about 68 cents, 60 to 70 cents per serving. So the whole dish itself is about $3.50, and that's not the whole container, it's just the amount that you use. So thinking that right here is $3.50, that's pretty budget friendly. So we'll take a bite of this and kind of let you know how things are tasting. Let it cool off. So that's something that you got those lentils, depending on how long it was been in the oven, how long it cooked through, they might be a little bit of crunchiness. If you like that crunchiness, definitely keep to it. Otherwise, you could cook it longer, let them get a little bit soft. But you're getting a lot of that acidic flavor with those tomatoes and then the onions that you have with it and that little bit of cheese.
Absolutely.
So our quiche is done, so we're going to pull that out of the oven and give it a try and cut it through here. You might want to let it sit for a few minutes, make sure everything's combined before you actually cut into that. So you can kind of see some of the egg kind of cooked on top there, kind of like what you would see if you would scramble an egg. You can see some of the vegetables and stuff are brown, and also the crust is a little bit brown as well. So you can let it sit a few minutes and then cut into that.
Yep.
So our quiche sat a little bit, so we're just going to take a little bit off the side and take a sample here.
Mushroom.
And that's something a lot of times when you have a quiche, you can kind of put it into that pie formation, however you want to cut it up. But something that it will stay together. And let me get some of these vegetables in here. It'll probably be pretty hot. So that's what, again, a nice thing about letting it cool down for you. So you get that flakiness from that crust, you get a lot of that egg flavor, but you're gathering a lot of that mushroom and asparagus kind of flavor that's kind of coming out into that. So nice, very quick, easy dish, very easy to make. Total cost for this dish is, again, about $3.40, $3.50. Again, depending on if you're using fresh or frozen products, that is going to kind of vary a little bit. So per serving, you're looking about 60 cents per serving. So again, very budget friendly, very healthy, and again, very quick and easy for any kind of meal. Again, not just for breakfast, but also for lunch and dinner. Thank you for tuning in to iHeart Cooking. We hope you enjoyed these budget-friendly meals and the information we provided today.
For more heart-healthy recipes, you can visit Reid Health's website at reidhealth.org/iHeartCooking.
We'll see you next month.